Maitreya Buddha. How many people have heard about the Buddha Maitreya? Who is this being? Well, so the Buddha Maitreya really embodies a spirit. Yeah, he is a spirit of loving kindness that is basically embodied by the Buddha to come. And many people, including Thich Nhat Hanh, as well as others in some of the more progressive East Asian Buddhist communities, talk about this Buddha of the future, or what sometimes he is called the Buddha of becoming, as being showing up in a community or in a community. Yeah, so it's not necessarily like kind of like we're waiting for some great Messiah to return to save us, but rather the spirit of Maitreya is Maitri, or loving kindness, which is in the Pali language, it's metta, same word. And it really means a spirit of friendliness, what we call loving kindness, and the wish for well-being, safety, and happiness for all beings. And ultimately, this is embodied in some of the texts by a person called the Chakravarti. Chakravarti is sort of the enlightened leader that governs or rules according to the principles of the Buddha. So there was a king, King Ashoka, who was, the Buddha traveled in very, very highly placed circles, as well as appealed to people who were not so highly placed. And part of what distinguishes a universal monarch, which is what this Chakravarti embodies, is that the well-being of the people depends on the leader. And if there is any portion of the people that are unhappy, dissatisfied, then it's a reflection of the leader, and he, she, or they must attend to those people. In other words, you can't ignore who is on the other side of the aisle if they're not happy. You really are having to bring the teachings, bring the practices into all of your activity. In other words, there is no dualism here, and there is no separating people out. It doesn't mean there's no conflict, but you can't just race back to a party and say, well, this is our view. Sorry, everybody, but you're out of luck. So it really is putting the leader into the position of having to attend to all of the beings, in the same way that when we practice the Bodhisattva vow, we vow to attend to all living beings, underscore the all, not just some, not just those, but not those, right? All living beings. And this too, we can see, is part of the triangles, because we can apply that model perhaps to our preferences and our dislikes. So I know that some of us on here are very, very hot when it comes to politics, and I get it, yeah. And yet, not being content with simply resting on one side or the other, but just holding to that middle path. What is the center that takes us beyond the polarity? And so constantly striving to see beyond. That really matters nowadays. It doesn't mean the answers are clear or immediate, but they're there. And it's our practice that clears the way for that. This is why, one of the reasons why we're doing the purification practice, the clearing, the rituals, especially after the last year that we've had, and that we're continuing to have, especially in the Middle East, as well as Ukraine. So, I mean, there are other places in Sudan. There's no shortage of problems happening right now, and yet concern has to be non-dual on some level. And it doesn't mean we can't have opinions, but we don't stop stop there. So Maitreya Buddha really is trying to help us understand that middle path, that there can always be loving kindness and compassion. It doesn't mean we can find it easily all the time. His consort is Dupa Tara. So Tara is another form of Tara. And here with Maitreya Buddha, she is seen to be, what we could call the goddess of incense. So we've been lighting a lot of incense here, Dupa Tara. And part of that is because the fragrance of intention and the fragrance of Dharma pervades everything. It is, in other words, if I light incense in here and there's a closet right here, if I go into the closet and close the door, I'm still going to smell the fragrance of the incense. So that's sort of the wisdom energy, the power of Dupa Tara. And Maitreya Buddha is encouraging all of us to relate through love. He is seen to be the combination of all the Buddhas, the culmination, if you will. And it's all about what we talked about earlier, intention and dedication, or adhitthana and pranidhana. So in this sense, the Buddha of becoming is us. It is within the practices we share together as community. It symbolizes this path of growing in unity and not encouraging separation, and really a path of relating in wholesome ways. This is one of the reasons why this adhitthana presence, this transmission, is like Dupa Tara's fragrance. What we bring, everyone feels. And if they don't feel it deeply, at least there's some question about it. When we show up with this practice leading the way, this presence of caring, when we're relaxed, when we're open and we're clear and we are in a place of, it's not always possible. I get it. It's sometimes we're human beings. We're talking about ideals and yet can't always feel it. So the point is that despite our own feelings or our own shortcomings, we're still showing up with a sense of wholeness. And that can also include our own fallibilities and the things that trigger us naturally. We all have them. So we're not talking about denying those things. And yet this is also what the triangles is there to help us kind of work through, so we're not showing up blindly. And part of this too, and I've talked about this before, I think we did this on a retreat a couple of years ago. So we're holding past, present, and future. If we think about the Maitreya Buddha being the Buddha of the future, that's all well and good, but I have a history of this problem, of this conditioning, of these traumas, this wounding, so on and so forth. So being forward focused, all well and good. So what do I do about these imprints that I've accumulated all these years? And part of the answer to that question is, and also in contemplating what no longer serves us. It doesn't mean, getting rid of a history. How can we do that? But rather, we remain fully present as we look at our histories, as opposed to living and reliving the history itself. It's a slight shift, but it makes all the difference. So our practice is always present moment. That recognition of the history of Chris, or of Jim, or Ruth, or Karen, or Lana, Marie, and so on, our histories really matter. They're part of who we are. Some of those histories are blessings. We receive cultural benefits from our group, our tribe, our families, what have you, and also our racial backgrounds. They matter for good or for better or worse. But it's really about encountering those histories from the present moment, because that's shining new eyes onto where we've come from, as opposed to replaying the same narratives. Whenever I go back in time to this part of my growing up, this is what replays as if I'm back there now. And so how we begin to change some of those patterns, if we're dedicated to it, is to be fully here and now and basically relate to those histories, bringing all of the practice and all of the wisdom that we have now. That may feel intuitive. It may be like, well, duh. But it's not so easy to do, is it? No. But it is part of the path, not just practice, but the path of committing to relating to our past, our histories from the present, as much as we're able to do so mindfully. This is what mindfulness helps us to do. Now, when we start talking about the future, we may be talking about uncertainty. What are sort of the pitfalls of the future? The pitfalls of the future could be anything from anxiety to worry about uncertainty, what's gonna happen if and when. And that's the same kind of process. And so looking ahead, looking into the future from the present, it doesn't mean we don't have aspirations. But we're not projecting expectations. We're not projecting the neediness of outcomes, but rather looking ahead with aspiration. This is what will help us embody Maitreya Buddha from the present with the aspirations of the practice. Now, where is the present in all this? Well, it's in between. It's the convergence of these two. It's the reality of our lives, the eternal present. So part of looking at aspirations as opposed to attachments, there's a very distinct difference here, is through Buddha Maitreya, asking what things do we want to unfold for the future? What is our vision? What is our path? What is our mission statement? That could be the vow, that we embody. And so aspiration and action. So how do I show up? Again, we keep coming back to this notion. And from a Vajrayana view, if we consider that all is on the path, nothing is off the path, including the three poisons. And the key is to maintain clarity, maintain this sense of awareness of what is happening, and do so playfully. This is another quality of the tantric practices. Let's do it with a sense of awareness, but also with a sense of playfulness, so that we're not taken in by the Maya or the illusion, by Mara's obstacles that he keeps throwing into our path. Now, we all have this experience, all of us. So remember, the next time you're getting frustrated about the way things are, we're probably there with you. We're also going to be there as a community supporting you. And this is the blessing of community, of Sangha. That whatever it is you're feeling, whatever it is that is happening in your life, whatever obstacles or hindrances are remaining, that this jeweled net is holding you. And all of us want this world to be better. We all do. And probably in somewhat similar ways, I would imagine. So this is kind of the pep talk, and I'm encouraging all of us to kind of reflect on the benefactors. As we mentioned earlier, who are your benefactors? Who are the ones supporting you on this path? And how can they help you? So we return to this question, what do you need? for 2024? What is it that you need? And how can the path help you? How can the community help you? And how can the ones who accompany us on this path help us? Part of it is being clear. If we're not clear, then we're not going to get much of a clear response. And so part of the alchemy, if you will, of working in this world is putting things out there that are really clear. But if we're confused, or I'm kind of this, but it's kind of that, but I'd kind of like this and I'd kind of like that, this has been my experience, nothing happens. I have to really know what I'm asking for, and putting it out there clearly, in very clear terms. So maybe that's the other part of this. If you can articulate with utter clarity what it is you need to happen in your life, to offer it up in whatever way makes sense, and to hold your aspirations and your intention in the heart of love, anything is possible.